So if you look around you in most of our big cities, you will probably see more solar panels than you've ever seen in South Africa before. They seem to be being built on almost every structure at the moment. At the same time, there's some estimates, there are lots of different estimates, but some estimates that there may be 2,000 megawatts of solar generation capacity on the roofs of homes. That's about 2 stages of load shedding. At the same time, companies that can afford it are installing their own renewable electricity. Companies that can't afford it are basically losing business. Lungile Mashele is an energy economist, an electricity economist. Lungile, good afternoon to you. We're in the middle of what people often call a just transition. We're supposed to be moving in a managed way to a different power situation. Is what is happening now really a just transition?
So good afternoon, and thank you for having me. So over the last couple of years, South Africa and South Africans have been transitioning to perhaps more greener solutions, more energy efficient solutions. However, none of this is just as it is currently happening. Whether it be in law, whether it be in practice, you have even at a residential level where we see the gaping inequality where certain households are able to take themselves off the grid or to supplement their grid usage, and therefore they have electricity during peak hours. Their kids are doing better, their kids are able to eat, they are saving money by not having to find alternatives, and that's on a residential level. So you can imagine even for SMEs or for large corporates that those who have solutions tend to have more money at their disposal, are doing better, and the small guys are basically being drowned out and swallowed out. And then of course if you look at larger government, regulation, it certainly doesn't help. There's nothing just about what is happening currently.
There was a time when government tried to manage the sector more effectively, so there were limits on embedded generation. There were different ways of managing things. That's all changed, and that's really changed because Eskom has failed so badly that I think that the government had no other choice for the economy. So does that mean that government has sort of lost control of this process?
So, with the embedded generation, lifting of the caps, that is all fine and well. And in fact, I actually encourage it. Eskom is not able to bring in or to get enough megawatts on board and on time. So people have had to find solutions. What we have seen, however, from round 5, round 6, and with the battery round also, is that government has relaxed requirements, especially along economic development. And they, initially in the bid documents, you were looking at a 70-30 split between price and economic development. Now we're down to about 90-10. And this 10 is not punitive. No one will get, in trouble if they do not adhere to it. So everybody's going to be chasing price. This basically means anything linked to economic development, enterprise development, linked to job creation, local content, all of that is out of the window. Stephen, this is not a black and white issue. It's not a rich versus poor issue. This is going to affect Sibusiso, who needs electricity, in the same way it's going to affect a major company that produces cables in this country.
It's such a complicated argument, this, because the idea of using this to generate economic activity, to create companies, to create wealth, and very necessarily black wealth, is vital. On the other hand, the argument against that would probably go along these lines, that the energy crisis is so bad, our economy, as unequal as it is, can't function without electricity, so we just need to move quickly. Where should the balance lie then? I mean, and you make the point that in a way a balance hasn't been struck. Government's just moved away from it.
Absolutely. And where we're finding ourselves, we always need to take ourselves back to where we are and who we are as a country. We have the second largest unemployment rate in the world, second to Nigeria. We have the highest level of inequality in the world. What we're seeing with this electricity crisis is a growing schism between corporate, between government, and between people. And this is all happening a year before national elections. We're sitting in a situation, as you rightfully said, where let's rather chase electrons and we can focus on all the other issues later. I challenge you and every other person to say, good luck building anything in this country with a non-existent social compact and without a social license. We know how imperative it is for, especially, let's say, mining houses to have social and labor plans. Otherwise, their mines will be collapsed by the requirements from labor, from government, from municipalities. This same requirement is being shifted into the renewable energy space. And in fact, let me just say energy space as an entirety, because it will affect new nuclear or new coal or new gas. Everybody's going to say, we expect something from these projects. And if these regulations have been dropped and there's no need to look at economic development, enterprise, supplier, job creation, ultimately what you're saying is, let's bring in foreign entities with their labor, their skills, their raw materials, their equipment, and let them build what they have to do in this country. Let the money fly overseas, and we do not even care, because ultimately that money has to circulate in the fiscus. And if we allow this to continue unabated, this money goes overseas and it does not circulate in this economy, even though we're the ones that have generated this particular requirement.
So, okay, so I mean, essentially we got ourselves into a bad crisis, a very bad crisis. The government had to basically kind of just sort of let slip and let the dogs of capitalism, let me use that expression, sort of do their thing. Can government pull it back? Are there other people in society, maybe trade unions, who can try and pull it back? Or is it just too late? Has the horse bolted?
It has not bolted at all. It is going to need a collaborative effort between government, you've got your municipalities and your communities, as well as your private companies. And the reason why this is so important, especially in this country, you cannot build anything without there being some kind of involvement from labor or from what people would term the construction mafia, or even some kind of business forum. So all of these projects that we're hoping to come on board, I can almost guarantee you, if we continue on this path, will not come on board, one, but does not bode well for the energy industry as a whole. And people will then continuously keep saying that, oh, but these technologies do not deliver, this doesn't happen. And if you look at the root cause, it is because there is very little, if any, coordination between government, between various stakeholders, and more importantly, the private sector.
A lot's going to happen. I mean, I can also see, Lungile, a huge argument around all of this. So some of the people who are benefiting from the current situation are going to sort of fight and say, well, look, okay, we need to get as much electricity into the network as quickly. We need to chase the electrons. And dare I say, if I were the governing party at the moment facing an election, I might side with them, because I know that load shedding costs me votes. There's a sort of element to this of politics which makes it quite interesting. And yet, that may not be the correct thing. And yet, time is a real factor in all of this.
Absolutely. So it's that race towards, maybe, let's say, I'm assuming that the elections are going to be May 2024, and it's a race towards that. You cannot have a situation where you're allowing overseas foreign entities to come into the country and to do as they please. If they wanted to bring 10,000 employees to build these things overnight, the current regulations do allow them. However, can you imagine the visual sight of 10,000 foreign people working on a power plant? It doesn't matter whether it's solar, it's wind, or whether it's gas. But in a country where we're sitting with the second highest level of unemployment and gross inequality, you're going to have a situation where people are coming in and they don't have to adhere to the labor laws that we have. They can undercut salaries. They can make people work 24 hours a day for 30 days in a month. And those are some of the challenges that government is going to be faced with. But also, I would not want to be a government that goes into elections where the electorate is upset. All of them, be it industry, be it the consumer who has to pay more for electricity, be it people who are saying we are sitting without jobs and these could have been our jobs. This is why that collaborative effort is so required on an urgent basis. Otherwise, we risk collapsing all infrastructure projects going forward.
Lungile, realistically, how's it going to play out? What's actually going to happen in the real world, do you think?
In the real world, government is basically going to ignore this, and I really hope not. It's going to lead to a social catastrophe. If we look at where the renewable projects are currently headed to, because we don't have grid capacity in the northern, western, eastern Cape, they're heading more inland. So we're going to see projects in Mpumalanga, seeing projects in Cape Town. In KZN. We already know that these particular provinces are rife in terms of project sponsor dependency, meaning that they are very used to large mining entities, even Eskom coming in and being able to supply jobs and supply local content and local industries and stimulating local economies. So as these projects move there, there'll be this huge expectation that unfortunately will not be met. You then have a situation where there's no social lubricant or social filter between communities, municipalities and the private sector, and they are going to clash. We're going to find ourselves in a situation where there's social upheaval only because people are on the outside looking in and they're hungry.
Lungile Mashele, thank you very much indeed. Really do appreciate the time, the energy expert and economist. Sober conversation there.